Well, hi, everybody. My name is Bradley Steyn, and this is Declassifying the World Headlines. So, what I'm doing here is making sure. So, I'm going to start again. Forgive me. Hi, guys. So, welcome, everybody. This is Bradley Steyn. I am doing something new here. This is called Declassifying World News Headlines. So I'm a former intelligence operative and a national security advisor. I work in geopolitics as well. And what I'm going to do this week is take us through the news headlines that we are all so very concerned about. This world is in turmoil at the moment, and there's a hell of a lot going on that we need to know about. So what I wanted to do was just touch on a few things. I'm going to start here in South Africa, and thank you so much for joining. But I just wanted to go over a few headlines that are trending here in South Africa. That is the missing US envoy from South Africa, Mcebisi Jonas, and the state that this has now left us in as South Africans. So our so-called special envoy to the US hasn't set foot in Washington, D.C. since April, leaving trade and diplomacy hanging in there by a thread. You know, whether it's bureaucratic paralysis or mixed messages from the office of the presidency here in South Africa, it's signaling to Washington that South Africa isn't very serious about avoiding the tariff increases or rescuing AGOA. And this is very important for us in a year when the renewal is on the knife's edge and America's patience is fraying with South Africa. This silence isn't just costly, but it's economic sabotage. And in slow motion, and in actual fact, it's pushed us to the edge of the cliff, and a lot of our markets and our people have actually fallen off that edge of the cliff, where it's affected our most vulnerable people and the poorest of our people. So it's very disturbing. I know that on the news this week, apparently there's been calls between President Trump and Cyril Ramaphosa. But Cyril Ramaphosa moves at the pace of molasses, and it's very slow. And what's completely mind-boggling to me is that, I said on the Biz News show last weekend that I did, and we got over 110,000 views, that the biggest problem is that we have shipping containers full of oranges, table grapes, that are now going bad. And who's going to suffer? The farmers and the farm workers. So, there's a lot of things that President Ramaphosa could be doing very proactively and that he's not doing. So it's incredibly frustrating to see this from the point of view of somebody that's been in those rooms and understands the dynamics of putting these deals together. And it's quite shocking. Here, for instance, the Trump administration has worked through several deals like this, and yet South Africa can't conclude one deal like this. The United States, the White House under Trump, is working through several different agreements with foreign countries, other countries. It's not just South Africa that's dealing with this issue, but South Africa just doesn't seem to want to budge with things like the BEE, broad economic empowerment policies, and where they don't want to step back, and where it's not really helping a lot of South Africans. It's just helping a small few of entitled, rich, politically connected South Africans. So it's quite bewildering. And then I want to just touch on Fikile Mbalula, Mr. Frikadel, the Secretary General of the African National Congress, who's practically daring the US government to sanction us. You know, he's wrapped up in this anti-imperialistic theater, bravado, jargon, as if we have the cards to play that game. We have the cards with things like, we have things the United States wants. We have the iron ore, we have the manganese, we have the agricultural products that the US want. But, you know, this whole anti-imperialistic nonsense, it's doesn't budge very well with a country like South Africa that should be on its front foot. Ordinary South Africans will remember who lit this match. This is just nothing but political chest thumping here at home. But in the eyes of the markets, it's a suicide note on the public and not the politicians, because we as the public will be forced to sign this and we will be left with the fallout. But I'm very, very optimistic and excited to see the fallout that the ANC has gone through post their NEC conference that they just had in Germiston. You know, they've lost a massive ally in the South African Communist Party, who's been with them, you know, since before the 94 election. And now, 30 plus years later, the South African Communist Party has said, hi, Kona Wena, we're not interested in bringing our numbers, bringing all our supporters to come and back the ANC government. And then on top of that, you know, you have very well-respected foundations like the Mbeki Foundation, the Steve Biko Foundation, the F.W. de Klerk Foundation, who've also lost a lot of faith in this ANC administration. So the ANC in 2027, with this upcoming election, I'm telling you now, and mark my words, they are not going to have the majority vote in this country anymore, because people can see and they are calling bullshit, and people are fed up in this country. And it's a good thing. The third point I wanted to cover today was the MK leadership, the so-called Umkhonto we Sizwe political party. As you know, I don't really like the fact that they use that name of our military unit for my former beloved ANC. But, you know, on the home front, the MK party's revolving door system. I'll get to your question now, Luanda. Thanks, but I see you've sent it. But let me get through these and then I'm going to come back and I'll answer them. But talking about the MK party's revolving door at the moment, and, you know, the leadership spins again with the ex-Sanlam executive, Dr. Bongwani Mngwano Ngo, forgive me for messing up his pronunciation of his name, stepping in as the SG, the Secretary General. He brings a lot of corporate polish, fair enough, and boardroom discipline. But in the MK fractional jungle marketplace that he's in, that's like wearing a white suit to a mud wrestling match. If he survives the backstabbing, it's because he turned himself from an administrator into a street fighter. You know, I don't have much respect for that party. And I'll tell you why. For instance, this last week, I went to Parliament to the ad hoc committee swearing in of the new chairman to oversee the Mkhize ad hoc committee. And the MK head that came in late. He barely made it on time. But you know, here's the thing: it's just a lot of warm wind, hot wind, warm wind wat weer blaas, and unfortunately, there's no real constructive dialogue. It's and I understand the revolutionary voice. I come from that revolutionary voice, but it's very counterproductive. So I understand that people want to hold on to the legacy of the revolution that we fought in. But I just think that people like the MK party are not being very productive in Parliament and not really serving our people and the citizens very well. Point number 5, and I'll get back to your questions, the National Dialogue Walkout. The Mbeki Foundation, the Steve Biko Foundation, the FW de Klerk Foundation have now walked out. They've said that Ramaphosa's national dialogue, and they're calling it poorly organized and stacked with political geriatrics. And when your so-called dialogue is born as a shield against a whistleblower claim hitting the presidency, you've already lost the moral high ground. When the heavyweights are gone now, what's left? There's all the legitimacy of a selfie stick and at a funeral. You know, it's pretty embarrassing, because we will recall that, and to me, this is like President Bush when he heard for the first time the Twin Towers have come down. To me, this is what it must have been like when Cyril Ramaphosa had an aide say to him, General Lucky Mkhwanazi, has just blown the whistle on the fact that the senior management of the ANC in this presidency is complicit in state capture, and General Mkhwanazi is blowing the whistle. I could just imagine what President Ramaphosa's face was like. But now President Ramaphosa jumped on a plane, he came back to Mzansi, and instead of addressing a national security issue like this immediately, what did he do? He thought, okay, I need to buy some time. Let me talk about this dialogue. And it was more of a knee-jerk reaction. And what saddened me the most was, for instance, Nosipho Hani, she's a young lady that's an ambassador, youth ambassador in our country. She's highly respected by a lot of people. She wasn't invited into this dialogue. In this dialogue were just a bunch of old Madalas and a bunch of old people. And surely we want to hear from our youth. Our youth are the future of our country, and it's up. If you were smart about this, President Ramaphosa, you'd really ask our youth, what the most important things are, what needs to be addressed in our country. But instead, this national dialogue has now fallen on deaf ears. So it's a serious issue in our country. I'm talking about another very serious issue in our country. The Iranian intelligence operations that are taking place in our country here, like it owns Mzansi, because it's maybe given some shelete, some tulawena shelete to some others so that they can walk around and operate freely in our country. And it's tracking dissidents. It's probing Israeli and Western linked targets here in South Africa. And it's leaning on organized crime for logistics. This is recruitment and surveillance. Influence ops are happening here in plain sight. The Iranians are running around. Plenty of intelligence services are running around. And unfortunately, our head of Dion Schreiber has not addressed the fact that Home Affairs needs to issue visas to all these international so-called tourists, visitors that want to come to South Africa. That's how we figure out who these intelligence operatives are operating freely in our country where they shouldn't have carte blanche here. It's not okay. It's not acceptable. And South Africa, Pretoria, like Tshwane House, the former Tshwane House has turned into Tehran's quiet, confidential, continental clubhouse. And Pretoria's silence isn't just weakness. It's an open invitation. And I've said the biggest problem that we have in this country is that money buys anything here. People just want money. There's no ethical, moral leadership. And there's foreigners running around this country that are using our SASA grants, that are getting SASA grants, foreigners that are also going into the hospitals and taking precedent over our own citizens. I find that disgusting. But I also want to just jump to, I've got 3 more points here. I also want to just jump to the arms export controversy in this country, because this is very serious issues here, guys, that I'm sharing here with you. And I hope that you appreciate it, because I don't get paid for this. I'm doing this as a watchdog, as a whistleblower, as a former spy, intelligence operator. And this is the way that I do my activism now, because I can't go out there and do what I used to do, because I do other things now. But this is my job, and thank you for the hearts and the love and the kindness. I appreciate you guys so much, and you're giving me goosebumps. But it's our patriotic duty as South Africans and like-minded South Africans that we do right by our country and by our people. So what is incredibly important is that we keep our elected officials accountable, and it's up to us. It's up to nobody else but us. So there's a big arms controversy going on in this country. And you might remember that the American ambassador got kicked out, or actually he resigned rather. Forgive me, that was incorrect. But he left, Ruben, I think his name was, because he blew the whistle on the fact that there was a ship here in Simonstown that had illegal weapons on it. But this is happening. This is reality. Because our government is so poorly run, people can go in there, pull moves and bribe us and get away with murder. And it's not okay because it's happening in our country. And who suffers the consequences? We do, because then the US sees this and they want to hit us with high tariffs because our country is run poorly, because our human rights are being stood on and trampled on. Everything that we fought for, and I fought in MK for, was everything that the Freedom Charter stood for. And now they use the Freedom Charter as toilet paper. So that's one of the reasons why I do this. But once again, our arms industry is under the microscope. There's a company called RDM, Rheinmetall Munitions. These O's are owned by a company called BlackRock. BlackRock is probably, Google it, it's probably one of the biggest companies, most successful companies in the world. It's also a proxy for an intelligence agency. But you guys Google and figure out who that is, because I'm not going to take time to talk about that. You guys can do your own homework. But it's very important to know that this company, Rheinmetall Munitions, produces a 155 millimeter assegai shell. It's a high explosive and even has white phosphorus components. But, you know, government will go and call it job creation. But without watertight end user certificates, it's blood money. And we keep ignoring the outrage. And Pretoria could be reminded, or sorry, rather remembered, not for building democracy, but for arming dictators and war criminals, because this stuff is ending up in the wrong people's hands. So, guys, I also wanted to state that in Parliament, there's a member of Parliament that has asked the Minister of Defence how many times they've gone and checked the EUC, which is an end user certificate, which you need to produce if you buy military products. You know what the Minister of Defence said? That they haven't checked an EUC certificate in 15 years. 15 years. So God only knows what's been going on and what's happened back and forth here in this country with how weak and how corrupt a lot of our systems are. Point number 8, and then I'll get your circus. Tony Bombshell, I see you got a question. I'll respond to it. Parliament and the Boswalkie circus, as my brother Neil the Beer used to say. Look here, like I said, I sat in this ad hoc committee and the chairman vote on Makwanazi's claims. And I'm telling you now, this was all decided way before anybody had even raised their hands inside Parliament on who was going to be the chairman. And only one person, Darlene James with Action SA, what a lady. I have a lot of respect for her. Stood up and she said, and she called out the absurdity of letting the accused political administration, the African National Congress, run their own investigation. Now let that sink in. We've had Zondo commissions, we have all these different commissions, and we keep going, and we keep going, and we keep going. Who's the chairperson that oversees these things? Unfortunately, They pull a move, and it is a member of my former beloved political party that I'm outspoken against now, and that we've lost so much confidence in. And that's what happened. They elected an ANC disciplined cadre deployment that has been there for years. So now the taxpayers will have to fund this soap opera. And, this GNU isn't what it's supposed to be. It's a coalition of convenience waiting to implode. And these allegations are serious. These are massive allegations. We're looking at 600 million rand. That's 34 million US dollars for a Secret Service fund and bucks that have been stolen. And then there's guys like this Vusi Cat Makhlala with a 360 million SAPS tender. You do the math, that's getting up to 100 million. It's going over 50 million US dollars. You know what people could do with $50 million? You know how much we could improve people's lives? Or rather, you know what we could do with $50 million if we used it in the right way within a national security environment. We could get rid of a lot of this rot and corruption. Point number 9, I just wanted to cover this racism podcast blow up that we've seen on the news this week. And Gayton McKenzie, a sworn minister's answers was to mirror the very prejudice he was condemning. In my opinion, it's proof that the TRC's failure that happened a long time ago to prosecute the apartheid crimes has left poison in our bloodstream. And now it's being bottled up and sold for political energy. And that poison is still fueling the political debate in our country. And it's very, very sad, and nobody's immune to it. But we know what we like as South Africans when we come together and we put the political rhetoric aside. We're amazing. We accomplish so much. We are the best in the world. Look at us. I don't have to tell you guys, you know that yourselves. But here's the thing, people. Our biggest problem are these political politicians, using this for ammo. And look here. At the end of the day, in my opinion, I think we should have had a Nuremberg trial instead. The guys that did bad things, they should have been hung. The guy like Barend Hendrik Strydom, die Wit Wolf, many of you might not know, but I witnessed him massacre people on Strydom Square when I was a young boy. When I was 17 years old, I was walking across the Strydom Square. In my opinion, that man should have got the death penalty. And that's a different conversation. The death penalty, it's like, for instance, this farmer feeding who killed these people, there's a perfect example, for instance. And the man that shot my brother-in-law on the farm in 2019, these people, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. So I seriously think if we want to be productive as South Africans, we should consider bringing back the death penalty in this country. And I know a lot of you will script because that comes out of my mouth. And I am an ex-ANC guy, and, I should be standing up for human rights. But unfortunately, iron sharpens iron. And we're at a place in our country where our constitution also needs to be adapted to deal with our current threats in our country. We have a lot of problems in our country. Look at Operation Duduzela. You know, they are standing at hospitals in Hammanskraal checking for IDs because our Pupo government can't even get it right. They're putting foreign nationals ahead of our very own citizens, the Magogos that can't get into the hospital. They, like I just said earlier, giving SASA cards. Foreign nationals are pulling moves, getting fake South African IDs and getting SASA cards. We need to take care of our own bloody people in this country. Other people that are here visiting, contributing, paying tax, and are legally and lawfully doing things, fine, shop. But the ones that are menace to society, we should do what the US is doing, in all honesty, in a lot of ways. Although I don't really like that ginger ninja on the other side there. But, you know, a lot of what he is doing from a securocratic point of view is a very good thing. Duze, I see your question. I'm going to answer it now. I just want to finish this last one. Oh, and it parlays right into Trump, racism, and distraction politics. In the US, Trump's hypocrisy is at Olympic level. Telling rioters to kill the police on January 6th. Remember that? Oh, on January 6th, incited the violence because he didn't win the election. Oh. Then, now he's handing out pardons and he's gutting the FBI. All those O's that started investigating Trump in the FBI and in the federal law enforcement space, he's gone back now and he's got all his chummies to check now who investigated me, and now he's firing them. And now, with this Epstein list, which he built his campaign on, now all of a sudden it's, we need to keep this quiet. Whoa, we can't be talking about this. The hypocrisy of this. Trump has, between Epstein and Trump, they've sent over 4,000 wire transfers. Hey, that's a lot of bucks between two big money O's. There's even a story going out there that the First Lady of the United States, who met Donald Trump through Epstein, and apparently there's a story, it's Google it, you'll see. Apparently their first lovemaking encounter, Mrs. Trump and Mr. Trump, was on Jeffrey Epstein's place. So the first Zeka that ever happened on Epstein's plane. They're so upset about this because they don't want these information, this type of information to come out, because it just shows credibility that they were all good Chinas at one stage. And now Mrs. Trump's office has sent them a subpoena saying a gag order. You can't be talking about this, airing my dirty laundry. But, you know, suddenly the outrage machine swings towards former President Obama, and he's head of the intelligence agency, of the Central Intelligence Agency at the time, Brennan. Now they're trying to pull up files, and because Brennan had looked into the fact that, and I've said this for years, that there's a possibility that Donald Trump is an asset of Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin's a very clever guy. He's an ex-KGB guy. And an asset, meaning that he secretly works for him. I was an asset many, many years ago for the security police. And then at the same time, I was an asset for Mponto Wesizwe. So I was a double agent. So I was selling secrets against other people. So I just wanted to give you a context of that. But Obama and Peter Brennan from the Central Intelligence Agency actually looked into that factually to see if there was any transfers, any communication transfers between Putin and Obama that weren't legitimate, and they actually were. They found classified documentation that President Trump had that he shouldn't have had with regards to Russia. So, you know, it's so hard to figure out what Trump's mindset is, because one day he's Putin's best China, the next day he cools his bromance with him and then deploys nuclear submarines. Last week he sent 2 nuclear submarines into the Baltics, into the ocean out there near Russia, quietly just keeping an eye, because him and Putin were apparently arguing, but maybe they weren't arguing. Maybe he wants us to think that they were arguing for optics. But one thing, you know, kudos when kudos are due, the South African government did turn away a Russian warship from the South African coast and told them that they couldn't come dock here. And then this morning, we heard that President Trump is now going to meet with Vladimir Putin in Alaska on Friday, this Friday, and that they are going to try and see how they can end this war between Russia and the Ukraine. Trump is trying to see how he can figure out how he can do that. But he has said that we need to talk about some territories being given back, etc. So basically, Trump isn't the master of the deal guy. He's just going to bully his way through this and take some of the Ukrainian land and say that this is a deal breaker if you don't give this to Russia. At the end of the day, I don't think there's going to be peace. But yeah, Trump, who's a master reality television show producer, is just staying in the headlines. Like they say, there's no such thing as bad press, which unfortunately leaves our world in a little bit of an unstable place. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. Thanks, guys, so much for tuning in. Let me go check your questions here, and then I will answer them. Okay, I got a question from Luanda. Who should we vote for? Bradley. My butt, I'm apolitical. I can't tell you who to vote for, but I need you to have a look and see what cities, what municipalities, what areas are being run the best. And then you make a decision. What I will say to you is that apartheid is never going to come back. Not over our dead bodies. It will never come back. Never. So you need to make a decision with your mind, firstly. And you need to look at the future, because you are the future. So that's up to you. You need to make that decision. But from what I'm telling you, it's not about people screaming and shouting old slogans of the past. It's now about namhlanje, now, today, tomorrow, what's affecting us. And for instance, Ramaphosa went cap in hand to the European to the European Union, asking for money again. Who's going to pay for that loan? It's us, our people. Let me have a look at the other question. Also, I just wanted to add, if you don't mind, why is our government not doing anything about the illegal aliens in our country? Mabru, because, they don't know their arse from their elbow. It's plain and simple. They cannot run this government efficiently and effectively, and we've seen that. We've seen that. Our infrastructure is collapsing. We've seen what happened with SARS. We've seen what happened with Bosasa. So much has gone wrong. But have a look and just see where things are going right. Our government does have a very big heart, and when it comes to our liberation history, and we fought a dirty, dirty war. A lot of our civilians don't know how dirty the war was. People think we didn't have a civil war, but we did. We had a covert civil war, and the clandestine war in the background was very dirty. And a lot of those countries, foreign countries, Zimbabwe, Angola, Mozambique, those people were very supportive of our liberation struggle. And but that's past now, and we need to take care of our priorities today. And those priorities are the human rights of our most vulnerable South Africans, and that's what we need to focus on. And that's just my opinion. Let me see. Here's another question from Tony Bombshell. Once a terrorist organization, always a terrorist organization. Bro, I don't agree with that, but you're welcome to your opinion. When you are being oppressed, then sometimes you need to pick up a Molotov cocktail to fight for your freedoms. So I don't really agree with you. Duze39 Hetabra, he says we need order. If criminality is not dealt with, humanity goes out the window. Couldn't agree with you more, bro. 100%. You're spot on. And therefore, this commission, this Makwanazi commission, is so incredibly important. And, you have this Brown Mochwetse, and that's why this Ramaphosa and this ANC administration are cucking themselves, because the people in the know that Brown Mochwetse and Kat and Senzo Mchunu and ex-police National Commissioner Sithole and Ramaphosa and all these guys, they're all bras. They're very, very tight. It's just us in the greater populace of our country that don't really know these things. But all those guys are old canonis from Alex days, and from the Northern Province, Venda. These guys are all chommies, and these are massive tenders. So there's a lot of Shilete that's been handed back and forth here. So, and that's why it's so incredibly important. I just wish that this ad hoc committee has an independent chairperson that will oversee the findings. because I said on Biz News last week on our interview that unfortunately, through some of my intelligence resources, I got to hear that there's a parallel investigation happening, which is completely illegal. But this is very typical of the ANC's skullduggery playbook, where Cyril Ramaphosa's office, well, probably through Senzo Mchunu, who's supposed to be suspended, but he's still making money at the moment, has now gone and told Lieutenant General or Major General Pakatile, the head of the Western Cape SAPS, to run a secret parallel investigation. And what does before the independent investigation, the official investigation has started, and that's so that they can get ahead of this and try and do some crisis management. So there's a lot of kak and hara here, and the same old nonsense. And I've said this before, Cyril Ramaphosa is a very clever guy, and he knows how to read a spreadsheet, and he knows how to pull a move. And we've seen I just wish, I don't know if you guys saw this in the news, the State Department in the United States has now offered $50 million. I even thought about putting some of my boys together and us going and pulling a move, but I don't do that anymore, for the capture of the Venezuelan president. $50 million to bring him to justice because they say he stole the election. Yeah, imagine if they looked at the CR17 files and saw how the South African government used a grabber to get information on the NEC members and who they were going to vote for, Mrs. Dr. Zuma or Cyril as the president. He also cheated and stole his presidency in this country. So maybe there'll be a reward for him as well. But anyway, I think that's all the questions. Oh, here we go. Same thing. Apartheid is alive and well in the so-called New South Africa. Yeah, I agree. Because we didn't have Nuremberg-style trials. Iron sharpens iron, guys. So I just wanted to thank you all for your time and for checking in with me. Again, my name's Brad Steyn. If you haven't read our book is Undercover. Oh, check his dorings. It's an audiobook, Undercover with Mandela Spies, the story of the boy who crossed the square. And by buying the book, you help support us. I'm not politically affiliated or anything like that. I have a small company. It's called Hawk Associates. But unfortunately, our company is also taking strain with these tariffs now. We help international businesses do business in Africa and throughout Africa. We do risk assessments, etc. And but yeah, stay safe out there. This is an incredible country. I've traveled to 111 countries doing security for government, private entities, etc. But I came home to Mzansi because our people rock. Our people are the most amazing people. And I know that there's a lot of unsolved stuff, but it will always be there. But it's up to the individual and up to us to be patriots and to step up for our country. So thank you, and God bless you guys. And please send me messages if you have any questions. I'll put them in the script of mine so that we can figure out how to address your questions and your concerns. And yeah, stay in touch. I'm also on Instagram. You can check me out there, Brad Steyn. And also, our film's coming next year, so keep an eye on that. We're doing a co-production deal in the United States. We've got some nice Hollywood actors that are reading our script at the moment, so keep your finger crossed. It takes a village, and I appreciate you for your time. Thank you.